Hey guys, welcome back to the More Than Muscle podcast. This is episode 8 and I'm your host, Matt Cooney. And today I'm delighted to be joined by David Young from Cork. David, how are you?
I'm very good, Matt. Thank you for having me on. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for taking your time out of your day.
No panic
So,
whatsoever, my friend.
so for anyone that doesn't know, Dave is a full-time online coach. He's the owner of the business Go Beyond Coaching, and he's been coaching clients for a long, long time now. He's actually probably the first online coach that I ever knew or heard of, definitely in Ireland anyway. And he's coached thousands of men and women and transformed their body, mind, and lifestyle. And also recently
Pay you
he's
later. I have to pay you later.
recently he's also started to coach other fitness professionals. He's come on board as a client success coach with Phil Graham. So today we're going to be picking his brain as he has a wealth of knowledge and experience in the fitness industry. Gonna do a good job there, Dave.
Yeah, that was absolutely perfect. I don't think I could have done it better myself. Absolutely flattered. At the same time, I think for myself, when I was starting out, end of 2014, I saw in the UK that there was some online coaching kind of happening, and I saw mostly in bodybuilding circles. So in bodybuilding circles, loads of people were starting to do online coaching. It was starting to become much more accessible, but no one was really doing it in Ireland yet, or at least not in Munster or Southern Ireland. Not too sure about Northern Ireland, but yeah, it was just an opportunity that I saw, and I was like, you know what? There's something there, and I just said, you know what? Let's go for it.
Yeah. And that's with the online coaching, you didn't start out in fitness. Is that right? You kind of, I remember,
Yeah.
we were in the same college. We were in CIT years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah, yeah. That's mad, isn't it? Yeah, so I was doing software development in CIT in Cork, and I started, I suppose, with a tech background. And I was just always into tech. It was always something where I was growing up, I got into computers, just got absolutely sucked into it. And what kind of happened was, I suppose, I was growing up. I was probably quite low on self-confidence. I was quite skinny, wasn't too happy with my appearance. And once I kind of got into college, I also joined a gym, and suddenly my passion from tech went totally out the window and fitness came in. So I kind of feel like when I started my degree, it was also a degree in going to the gym, and I got totally sucked into nutrition, primarily training, and just using myself as, I suppose, my own kind of experiment and kind of trying to figure out, like, how can I get in the best shape possible? Does this work? Does that work? And I think by the end of the degree, I kind of realized that my passion was elsewhere. And then from that, it just slowly transitioned. I went off and did the glorified PT cert, ticked the box with that. And I kind of just went from there, you know. But I suppose for me, my main goal first was to do a bodybuilding competition, see how that went. And off the back of that, I just had so much interest from people saying, look, I would love your help. Would you mind doing a nutrition plan for me? Would you mind doing this? And it was never something I actually thought about until I kind of realized, like, okay, so I really enjoy it. I know I can help people. People are getting great results. Why don't I try to do this as a bit of a career? So then the online coaching was kind of perfect, because with the tech background, it gave me a really good ability to, I suppose, build systems and build a kind of platform that allows me to help people in a really effective way. And that kind of carried it from that there. But yeah, like I suppose when I was just starting out, it was all new. It was kind of breaking on that barrier from in person to online. But when I was able to get great results with people, people were like, yeah, I don't really care. I'll pay whatever. Just get me into shape. So it kind of naturally happened like that.
And it is, yeah, that blend, I think, of the tech with the online coaching really benefited you, because I know even for me, I'm not that tech savvy. I have got a bit better over the
You've got
years, but
better.
it's a very slow process. I still want to throw my laptop out the window most days, but
You and me both, my friend.
so what we're going to get into today is, obviously we're going to talk kind of training and nutrition, but mostly about kind of mental health and mindset. And again, what we always end up doing is relating it back to training and nutrition, because that just happens
It's
naturally.
all the one, isn't it? Yeah, 100%.
So the
Cool.
first thing I wanted to cover is mental health. So I know from yourself that across your social media, you've kind of been very open with your experience kind of with mental health. And I know you mentioned kind of seeing a counselor or a therapist on your
Yeah.
stories. And what I found really interesting that I'd never heard before was the whole concept that you essentially said there was nothing wrong. It was more you being proactive than
Hmm.
reactive. And like
Yeah.
I never kind of heard that before, or at least put in that kind of context. So if
No,
you'd
I
like to kind
appreciate
of
it.
explain that or
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So like for myself, I think growing up, I didn't have the best childhood. I'm not gonna make this into a sob story. I don't think anyone benefits from that. But I didn't have the most stable childhood. It wasn't, I suppose I wasn't met where I was supposed to be met. That's what a typical therapist would say. But I was growing up, the foundations weren't as solid as they should have been. And I kind of realized into, I suppose, my early 20s that it was kind of affecting, say, my relationships with people, like the way I thought about things. And I could never understand myself. So, like, I would think this and think that, and or I would want to do this and want to do that. And I just could never understand why that was. And I think that for me, there wasn't anything majorly wrong, but it kind of led me down the path of saying like, okay, why is that? And I think when you work in the health and fitness industry, when you work with people, you naturally are a very curious person. And I think if you can understand something, you can always say, okay, that makes sense. Let's move to the next thing. So I think training and nutrition at the start became this real passion outwards, but for me, it kind of went inwards. After a while, it went like, okay, so like, what stops someone from getting in shape? What stops me from doing the things I know I want to do? What stops me from being the best partner? What stops me from being the best father? Like that obviously came a lot later, but it was kind of I suppose a benefit of doing all of that work before. But I suppose I was just really interested in my habits, my routines, why I did something, why I didn't do something. And that natural curiosity that kind of happened at the start with training and nutrition kind of fell really naturally into, I suppose, coaching people. So what I found with therapy, with counseling, whatever you want to call it, is that it just gave you a really good insight into yourself. And for me, I go every 2 weeks. There's never anything wrong at this stage. It's nearly like an hour-long chat, and I'm just discussing what's going on, how I'm feeling about that. Um, you know, I'm really trying to think, to be honest with you. It's mostly just a self-exploration and to
yeah,
kind of understand yourself at a deeper level. So I think being reactive when stuff goes wrong is nearly too late. It's like when you're dehydrated and you're thirsty. So you get thirsty, you drink water, you're already dehydrated. So if you think of when it comes to your mental health, why not get it before you're in a state where you're a bit on edge or a bit anxious or a bit uncertain or a bit unsure of where you're going, and actually be proactive with it and just check in with yourself? Because doing that work ahead of time, I find makes such a big difference to long-term happiness, long-term stability, long-term growth. So for me, it's kind of like an insurance policy, especially because I coach a lot of people. I want to make sure that I'm okay, so that I'm giving sound advice and that I'm able to support people. And I think as well, from going through the whole process over the last 2-3 years now, it's just made me a much better coach.
yeah,
I'm just willing to, I suppose, do the work and notice patterns in myself that I can then look to others and say, I think I know where you're at. But then again, scope of practice and all that. But it definitely helps to look at yourself and to start inwards first.
yeah. I think it's just, even when I heard you say it first, I was just like fascinated by it.
Yeah,
And I think it's really cool, like to see you kind of openly say it, and the way you even explain it, because a lot of people would be like, you see a therapist, or
yeah,
you're
100%.
like,
There's
or
there's a
hiding
huge
like this,
stigma.
whereas
Yeah,
it's a normal thing. Like you're saying, it's just going for a conversation with somebody.
you'd go
And
to a PT, you'd go
yeah,
to a physio if there's something wrong with some issue you have physically, but mentally we kind of tend to shy away from it. And sorry to cut across, by the way, but I think for me, I talk so openly about it because I know what it's done for me. And I talk so openly about it because, like, I've had people write to me and say, you know what, if I didn't go to a counselor, I don't know if I would be here anymore. And I only went because of what I saw on your social media. And like,
Yeah,
that's pretty deep, and that's pretty hard hitting. But like, I'm not sure about you. Well, I'm pretty sure about you, but I'm pretty sure that when you feel like you have an impact in someone's life, that's where you get the real fulfillment. And I think if I just talk about something that I don't really care if someone judges me, not everyone is going to like you anyway.
yeah,
And if it means that the people that hear or the people that need it say, do you know what, I'm going to go do that, and it improves their life as a whole, like, all the better, you know?
yeah. And that's like that. If you can get someone to take action and be proactive, because again, when you're reactive, like it's often too late, or you could have caught it, at like a
Yeah.
long time before. And you see that even
Yeah.
with health and nutrition as well. Like for a lot of people, sometimes it's not until something happens or they get the health issue, and then it's time. And like, obviously, just being proactive in general, I think could be so beneficial to a lot of people, and
Yeah.
not being afraid as well. Like you,
Yeah.
like you said, you're not afraid to say it, and then
Yeah.
it helps someone else.
Yeah, because I think everyone struggles, you know. If it's not in one way, it's another way. If it's not with confidence, it's with something else. I think everyone has something. And I don't think there's any shame in that. Like, I think everyone um, could benefit from looking inwards more if it meant that their life was better. Or, you know, even when you go to a coach, like even when someone goes to your self mat, you know, I bet they see improvements in ways that they never really expected, you
Yeah,
know, in relation to how they feel, their confidence, their mood, their energy. And it's not just all about, you know, how you look, how many abs you have, what you look at when you look in the mirror. Obviously it's a big part of it, but the benefits run so much deeper. And I think that's why, like, I think it's so important just to talk about the big picture, you know. I'm not sure what you think about that, but I know you're very mindset based yourself.
yeah.
And I suppose, like, for anyone listening, I'd be very curious, like, why you feel like you've kind of veered towards mindset yourself. Because I know you
Um,
probably started out with training and nutrition more so. You're probably similar to myself. You probably just
yeah.
veered to it after a while. But what was the transition like for you?
I think the main reason why I veered to it is I'm kind of obsessed with why people struggle. Like,
Mm,
I'm actually not that well. Like, obviously the results is one thing, I want to know how to get results, but I'm more obsessed and passionate about, like, okay, why is people still struggling?
yeah.
Why can't people stay on track, or why aren't they getting the results that they want? And because I remember,
Mm,
like, you probably know yourself, when I found out about nutrition, your calorie deficit and stuff, I was like,
yeah.
this is it, it's a winner. Like,
It's made.
this is the system. Like, everybody, I'm set
Easy.
for life. And then, like,
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out. I was like, why are people still struggling? Like, why are they not doing that?
Yeah.
And then that's what led me down kind of lifestyle first, and then now kind of mindset. And I'm like, okay, what's actually going on upstairs? Like, what's holding you back? And I think a lot of times it's mindset, and you don't even know it.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So that's what kind of got me first kind of obsessed with mindset, and still
Kind of
still
sunken
am to
into
this
it.
day. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's something I wanted to touch on with you. Was obviously you've coached so many people over the years. What do you think, why do people kind of struggle so much to
Oh
actually
man,
start
it's $1 million question, isn't it?
it? Yeah. Or what do you see, what
um,
common trends do you see?
yeah, 100%. So, like, I think for a lot of people, um, people get caught up saying, "I'll be happy when." I'd say you see that a lot yourself. I'll be happy when I'm in shape. I'll be happy when I achieve this. I'll be happy when I get to that point. And all that happens is the goalposts move further. You celebrate it for about 5 minutes. It never feels as high as you thought it would actually feel. And then you're left going, okay, what now? So I think we all fall into, and I think I'm guilty of this myself, if I don't constantly recheck in with myself, I'm guilty of always looking for, like, I'll be happy when this happens or that happens. So I think it's about enjoying the process. And I think it's about learning that this whole approach doesn't have to be pain and misery. It doesn't have to be, you know, chicken and broccoli, very low calories, smashing yourself down to get in shape. And it can actually be a lot more enjoyable. So when it comes to mindset and why people don't get in shape, I think it's loads of different variables. I don't think I know all the answers, but I think I see a lack of self-awareness, which means that someone doesn't know about themselves. They don't really know why they do things. They don't know why they veer to food when they're stressed. They don't know how to manage their emotions. It's mostly reactive, and no one really checking in with themselves when it comes to any kind of habits or routines. But honestly, I think it's so individual. I think it's so independent, like it's so individually um, reliant on the individual rather than a, a blanket approach that you could say, oh, here you go, you need to do this, you'll be sorted in 10 days. I think it's something that has probably caused an issue over a prolonged period of time. Now, if that's down to, when you were a child, you didn't get what you wanted, or you didn't have the right foundations, or you didn't learn how to cope, and then that kind of fed into long-term habits and routines, and then you're trying to undo them. I don't think it's a short-term process. I don't think for most people it's something you can solve overnight. So do I have the answer to that? I don't. Maybe you will have a better kind of feel for that after you've heard something I've said. Maybe I kind of click something, but I'd love to know your opinion as well and where you kind of sit with that.
Yeah, I think awareness is a huge thing, what you said there. And like something that I always tell people is like the food is the result, it's not the cause. And
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
very quick to look at the food and be like, oh, I just can't stop eating chocolate, or it's
yeah,
chocolate, I need to get rid of that, or carbs, I need to get rid of it. When
yeah,
that's only the result. If you need,
yeah.
you can start peeling back the layers and look at the cause, because
Yes.
it's, and I think for a lot of people, they're like, they say the words, I don't know why.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And there is a reason, there always is.
yeah.
Sometimes it's a lot harder to find than others, you have to go right into the back of the press to find it.
You
But
really have to, yeah,
yeah,
100%. Yeah.
and then even for us as coaches, that's why I think sometimes, like you said, sometimes we don't know the answer either.
Yeah, and it's okay to admit that, I think, because I think, and I'm not sure about you, but I think it's very easy to feel like we have to have the all singing and dancing answer to every single question we get asked, and I don't think that's realistically the case. Like, I know you're going off experience and obviously research and all that, but most of it is probably experience after working with people for a good number of years and seeing how people respond to X, Y, and Z. But I couldn't agree more. Like, I do think it's about peeling back the layers. I think people follow restrictive meal plans, and it's nearly like a band-aid fix for 6 weeks, 12 weeks, and then they go straight back to the same thing. And I think that's why when you work with someone, what actually seeps in the most and what makes the biggest change is saying, okay, let's look at why that happened. Like, why did you do that? What was going on in work? What's going on in your relationships? Has anything changed? I think those are all really good questions to ask yourself. It's when your environment changes and when stressors change and when, there's something bubbling up in the back of your head, but you're not really paying attention to it. And instead of
Yeah,
paying attention to it, you're going to food for comfort, or you're going to something else for comfort. Because my perspective is food is just to fill a void that has come about and that has presented itself because there's something missing.
yeah,
It's the same with any kind of addiction. Now, I'm not saying it's a food addiction. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But when you look at, say, alcoholism, you look at even like anything related to addictions, most of it is to fill a void in your life that has been missing for either a prolonged period of time or something that has started to become missing. Now, I'm not a therapist, but it's just the patterns I've seen over a prolonged period of time. I'd imagine you're probably somewhat the same.
yeah, definitely 100%. And like you mentioned, that is not a short-term thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's why restrictive meal plans and stuff like that can work in the short term. But when you're looking
Mhm.
at a long-term,
Prolonged. Yeah.
yeah, a long-term transformation, it is a bit more
Then
complex.
just, yeah,
And it's just
absolutely.
like they say, like obviously, there's more to it than a calorie deficit.
Yeah.
I think it's good in one way that on social media there is a lot now of
Of
getting
focus on
people,
calorie deficit.
yeah,
Yeah.
getting people the knowledge of that. But
Yeah.
again, that even comes with a pinch of salt, that sometimes people are like, they know what a calorie deficit is, but they can't do it. And then
Yeah.
that
Like,
makes them nearly feel worse, you know, when it's like, no, it's not just because like I know
yeah.
the Chinese language, I can't speak it. But
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know,
It makes people feel like, everyone is on social media saying it's just a calorie deficit. Why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? And then they take it on themselves and they say, okay, maybe there's something really wrong with me.
yeah,
And I think when you start taking that on and like really listening to that, it can feed into a cycle of just feeling like you're never good enough. And when you're in that cycle of feeling never good enough, like the idea of going on to another diet, another this, another that, when you fail, when you feel like you failed 10 times previously, is just something that a lot of people don't really want to do, because it involves pain. And I think when pain is involved, you're going to be very slow to address something like that.
yeah,
Like even a calorie deficit is great. Everyone knows it. It's on Google. There's workouts on Google. There's diet plans on Google. Why is obesity such a big issue? If it's that straightforward, why doesn't everyone just go to Google, eat less, move more, and you're done? But
yeah,
reality is, it is a lot deeper than that. And we don't have all the answers. I know you don't have all the answers. I know I don't have all the answers. But after a while, you do kind of gain a system. You do gain a repeatable process that does work very well. Obviously, there's edge cases and there's people that need different approaches. But I think once you do have a bit of a repeatable system, it does become a lot easier to kind of take someone from A to B. Now, that's not to say it's a magic bullet or it's a magic potion. But when you see the same commonalities, and I know you see the same commonalities with the people you work with as well, it does become something where you can say, okay, I've seen that 100 times before. I know what's going on here. We need to address X, Y, and Z. And then suddenly you see a big change. And I think that's the benefit of working with someone that has a lot of experience versus someone that's just going to prescribe meal plans or training plans. Like I know when I got first into the industry, I was like, perfect. I've got these nutrition plans. I've got these training plans. All I need to do is put someone in a calorie deficit, increase their cardio, and make sure they're training really well. And perfect. We have everything we need. And people will get results. It would be great. And over time, you get more challenging people and you get more challenging cases. And you start to go, okay, why isn't that working? And I guess it's the same with yourself, with what you said a while ago, that it naturally kind of flowed into more mindset when you realize that the same people you're trying to help aren't getting the same results.
yeah.
And then you're kind of scratching your head and you're going like, okay, like what the F is going on here? What am I going to do? Like what, what is not working? So like, I think for me, and you're probably the same, it's just after banging your head off the wall so many times, then you kind of go like, what is wrong here? And it's
Yeah.
those years of experience that kind of makes you go like, okay, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like I suppose from my perspective, I would love to know from your perspective, what you feel kind of gets someone moving at the start instead of trying to change everything. Like, so personally, I wouldn't try to change everything at once. I would slowly kind of try to bring about change. But then
Yeah.
it's a balancing act, isn't it? It's kind of like you don't want to give too little so that there's no results, because when there's no results, you're going to feel like you're wasting your time yet again. And when you go too fast, it can seem overwhelming. So I do think for me anyway, there's a balancing act, but I would love to know what kind of way you bring about change with your, it sounds very woo woo, doesn't it? Bring about
Yeah.
change, transformation.
But that's like, for me, what I try to do first is I look at it kind of like levers. So you have
Cool.
your like training, nutrition, stress, sleep, habits, routines. There's a lot of levers.
A lot
So,
of
but for
levers.
me, that's why I like when I find out information about the client, get speaking to them, you start to understand as I'm going through like a questionnaire or speaking to someone, I'd be like, things are
You
going
get
off
to
my head. I'm
feel,
like, this
yeah,
lever, this lever. And I'm basically, my thought process is like, what lever can we pull first that's going to give us the biggest return on
on
investment?
investment.
And
Yes.
the way I kind of put it is I use it as a domino effect, because it's only what often you'll see, you tell somebody to drink more water and don't say anything else, they'll
Yeah.
eat better
Yeah.
and they'll have a better mood and they'll probably sleep better.
More energy and
Yeah.
yeah,
And you
absolutely.
didn't say any, you didn't tell them to do any of that. So
Yeah.
again, but then if I said, I want you to drink 3 liters of water from a certain bottle at a certain time at a certain day, and then
Make sure you have it
some
gone before 12 as well, and make
yeah,
sure
somebody's gonna be like, oh my god, whereas I'm like,
what am I after getting myself into?
yeah. So
This
that's
Mac
where
guy.
small things. It's just like, what's the smallest thing we can do that's gonna
Yeah,
change,
absolutely.
and then with experience, like you said, you kind of already know, like, okay, this is gonna change as a result without having to tell them, and then from there you just build on it. It's just like thing I go on about a lot. It's just momentum with people.
100%. Yeah.
Like dieting's about momentum, and then literally everyone loses that momentum at some stage, and then
And then
just
they just, yeah.
pick yourself back up and start pedaling again and try and build that momentum. I think a problem is people expect that momentum to go 100 miles an hour and not stop, and
Yeah.
you know that nobody, it doesn't happen to anyone.
Totally agree with that. And I think expectation is also something that absolutely ruins people when the expectation is so high that it could never even be hit. And
Yeah,
like 2, 3, 4 weeks in, I'm sure loads of people listening to this can probably relate to it, women especially, that 3, 4 weeks in, you're not seeing the scales move. You've the expectation in your head that, you know, I should be losing pounds and pounds of weight. They have their friends in their ears saying, I've lost 5 pounds this week. I've lost 10 pounds this week. I've lost this week. And then you're chalking yourself up to comparison and you're kind of going like, this isn't working for me. And then a lot of people would just say, oh, it's a waste of time. What's the point? They lose momentum, like you said. And when
yeah,
they lose that bit of momentum, either due to actually falling off or due to their expectation being too high, they then disconnect and switch off. So a lot of what I do as well, and I imagine you're exactly the same, it's about bringing the expectation down and putting it more in line with what's realistic and kind of just carrying someone throughout that journey so that you get over that little hump that usually happens a few weeks in where you feel like it's never fast enough, it's never good enough. And I think once you can kind of carry someone throughout that and realign what their expectations should be, it becomes a lot easier because someone understands what to actually expect. So a lot of it is kind of reprogramming and resetting the kind of expectations that someone has to create that momentum and to make someone realize that, you know, you're not always going to be at 100%, but that's okay. You know, I don't know anyone that's at 100% like you said yourself. And I think it's really good when, you know, even just talking to someone that talks a lot of sense like that, because I think it's so easy for people to just fall down the rabbit hole of thinking on or off, on plan, off plan. I'm pretty sure we spoke about this before, but when people feel like they're either on plan or off plan, it turns into this constant cycle of always dieting. Like, I'm not sure about you, Matt, but the idea the idea of dieting for 20 years, 10 years, a year, 6 months straight isn't that appealing to me. And it's not something that I'd want to repeat over and over. And that's what I do see happen quite a lot. So when that momentum is lost, people generally put the weight back on. They say, ah, sure, look, it's grand, like it's wintertime, whatever it is, whatever justification.
yeah,
And it feels good at the time. It feels good to justify it. It's easier to justify it. And then what happens is 6 weeks down the line, 6 months down the line, 3 months down the line, they've ignored the elephant in the room and they're in a worse place than where they were previously, which then causes them to be reactive instead of proactive, like we were talking about previously. So no, I think momentum is a huge thing. I think understanding that it's not always going to be like a steam train, it's not always going to be perfect. I don't think I know anyone that I've coached for 12 weeks perfectly, yet people will have that expectation of themselves that they'll think, right, okay, I'm on it now, push life off to the side. This is it. No social occasions, no enjoyment. I'm losing the maximum amount of weight possible. I'm going to get the most out of this. And all that really happens is that they lose the ability to actually cope with normal life occasions, and they're perfect on plan. And what happens then is they go down one modality, one thought process, and they start to get the most out of it, and they never learn how to integrate it into their life. That's what I see a lot. I know I've went off on a bit of a tangent, but
no, it
I just
makes
think
complete
it's so
sense.
linked. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think expectations, like you mentioned, is a big thing. And for you, I think we're both the same. That we used to. Would you find this? I think this can be a problem sometimes. Is you've obviously coached a lot of physique athletes, like bodybuilders, photo, all
Definitely.
that stuff in the
Yeah.
past. And I think what tends to happen, and then I think both of us have, and now we've we're more general pop.
Transitioned.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
we still do a bit of both, but what
Yeah.
I see a lot is normal people have the expectations of the physique athlete or competitor. And like, I know you're probably the same as a coach. If you have a physique competitor and you have a normal general pop client, like my expectations for that physique competitor and the general pop are so
So
different.
different. Yeah.
And then I think the normal person gets caught
Mm.
thinking, and sometimes this can be because of social media as well, and the people we look up to or follow, and we
Yeah.
don't realize that their it's their expectations and their life is so different.
Yeah.
So you can't be expecting the same results,
Results.
you know?
Yeah, 100%. And like, I think a lot of people also get caught up with what they actually want. And I think a lot of people think, oh, I want to look like this, I want to look like that. But they don't realize like what sacrifices have to be made to look like that. And especially on social media, you touched on it there a second ago, a lot of people will compare themselves to people on social media where they have entirely different lifestyles. They're in entirely different places. Stress is at an all-time high when you're comparing yourself to someone that literally sits around all day, trains twice a day, chills out, watches Netflix probably a few hours, and you're expecting yourself to, and like, just for anyone listening, that's not a dig at anyone. It's
Yeah,
just the kind of way to get it across, that stress and a different lifestyle. And if you have so many other things to think about, you're not going to get the same kind of result as someone that doesn't have any stress, doesn't have any worries, and has built their life up to be optimal in this sense. And one really good thing I like to get people to do is to compare their part of their life where it isn't on social media. So like their families, their relationships, their career, their fulfillment in other areas of their lives, compare that to the fulfillment of other people on social media. Because what I find is that people will compare how they look to one part of someone else's life and forget about all the sacrifices and forget about all the other deficits in that person's life. And why I do that, even though I don't even like that, I really dislike when people compare, but I think as humans we do it anyway. I don't think it's something we can like zap out of our lives. We're gonna compare. But
yeah,
once you break it down and you kind of say, okay, like, how is my life as a whole compared to that person's life as a whole? And usually, if you actually look at the other traits and other parts of their lives, it's usually at a deficit to gain this one thing that you're putting on a pedestal that won't even make you that happy when you really, really break it down. You know, like I said it earlier on, that a lot of people will look at it and say, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when. And then you reach it, and I can tell you, you can probably tell everyone else as well from your own experience, but I can tell you, when you get to that point, you feel no more fulfilled, you feel no more happy, you feel literally not one bit happier to now be in this point where you're extremely lean, you're shredded, whatever way you want to say it. And I think for a lot of people, the penny drops and they realize it's something else in their life that's making them unhappy, or an area of their life that isn't fulfilled, or an area of their life isn't the way they really want it to be. It could be relationship, it could be career, it could be those would be the main two, to be brutally honest with you. But it
yeah,
could be, you know, something presenting itself in another way that they're trying to avoid, or that they're trying to mask with something else. I'd be so happy if I just looked like that.
yeah,
And it never works. It never ever works. And like, it's probably the unfashionable thing to say. It's probably smart for us to say, you'd be so happy when you're in shape, you'd be so happy when you do this, you'd be so, like, imagine how it's going to feel when you're shredded, imagine how it's going to feel when you're that lean, you can go to the beach and you can just feel amazing. But when you tie your happiness to how you look, it's never really going to follow through, because guess what, you get to that shape, now try to maintain it.
yeah,
Now try to, like, are you willing to put the rest of your life on hold to look that one way, to then be
yeah,
entirely unfulfilled in other ways? And that's not a dig at anyone that's a physique competitor. I think everyone is different. I competed, I did bodybuilding. I loved it at the time. Would I ever change it? No. I learned so much about myself, but I also learned that my self-worth isn't in how I look.
yeah,
um, so I'm really only ever talking from my experience. I know there's going to be people listening to this that are competitors, that compete, that their life is training, and that is absolutely fine. If you're happy, like, I'm happy for you, and that's a genuine feeling. But I just want to preface all of that with the fact that we're really talking about Gen Pop and the issues we commonly see with Gen Pop people. And I suppose I just don't want to be offending anyone that has found a lot of happiness in competing.
Yeah,
Because I think it's very easy to paint a brush, and it's very easy to say like, oh, that's stupid. You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be doing this. Whereas again, everyone is different. So,
yeah.
um,
I think, yeah, well, I think we're both the same. Like I competed as well a couple of years ago,
mm,
and again, I really enjoyed it. I actually
mm,
thought I was like, I loved
this
it,
is it.
but
Yeah.
I came out of it, and then I was like, again, like you said, kind of that self worth. But what I found from the process myself was I became so less and less focused on my physique, even though that's the whole point of the. It was more the mental game for me that I
Yeah.
was to get through it. And
That
again, like
challenge.
I was happy, but like you said, came off. I'm like, need to be bigger, need to be always. There's that comparison, but
Yeah.
it's it's just funny. It's just like you said with people's lifestyle. I think it's just the average person tends to compare themselves to the physique that because they just see the picture or that look. And like
Yeah.
I put it is, if you just draw, if you take a physique competitor, if you draw a circle, you slap training smack bang in the middle of that circle. Everything around that, then your nutrition, sleep, habits, stress, life, routines, that's all knitted just to fit that training. You know, it's all worked around training.
Mhm.
If you look at it, an average person's training doesn't even go in, it barely gets to the circle at all. It's sitting outside, you
What's
know?
that? Yeah.
Yeah. So again, like that's just two different lifestyles, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like just looking. Sometimes we
Such a
get
different
looking
modality.
at the end
Yeah.
product and not realizing, whoa, that's actually a lot of
Yeah.
areas of my life that I enjoy that maybe I'd have to at least
Put it
compromise.
on hold.
Yeah,
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think that is such a good way of thinking about it. Like visualizing it like that is very powerful. I really like that, and I think it just gets people to realize that like I think what I really want people to understand is if you're unhappy with how you look, you can change it, but don't ignore the elephant in the room of are you unhappy for another reason as well. And for most people that I do work with, because it would be much more Gen Pop these days, a lot of people would be unhappy with how they look, which is fair. You can change that, take action, do something about it, just like I'm sure you're of the same mindset. But a lot of people then won't address the reason why they've got into that shape in the first place. And usually that's because of either, an unbalanced lifestyle or something is just a bit off and it's just been left for a while, just not addressed. So usually when someone comes on with me, we have a really in-depth conversation. We really go into it, as I'm sure you're the same. And you ask people questions that they've never been asked, and they're kind of like, "Oh, never thought about that." And I think it's that kind of change and that kind of modality that brings about long-term change, instead of someone that's just going to shoot you off a diet plan, saying, "Here you go, speak to you next month."
yeah.
um, and it's a short-term fix. Like I would think that versus a longer-term kind of approach. But I'd love to know what you think with that as well.
I was just thinking, like I was wondering, do you find maybe sometimes the fitness industry gives the wrong impression with the messages that they put out? Like something just pops into my head is like,
Mm.
like something you'd hear a lot on social media is like, you don't want it bad enough, or I actually did a post with this yesterday. You don't want it bad enough, or you just, no excuses, do more, work
Yeah.
harder, and
Yeah.
like I think that's wrong. Sometimes that's
Right message.
yeah, because I'm kind of like, hey, hold on, you 24-year-old live at home PT. Here's two screaming kids, a mortgage, a relationship, and a shit
Yeah,
ton of
man.
responsibility. Like, how
100%.
bad do you want it now?
Yeah, like let's actually think about it. What life experience do you have? You're just freshly qualified as a PT, like as I'm sure we were at some stage, but you're saying like you don't want it hard enough and you're not working hard enough, no excuses and all this kind of mentality. I think it's a bit backwards. Um I don't know if many would agree with that, but I do think that when you add a lot more stressors and when you add more things into your life to think about it. It doesn't just become about how you look, you know.
Yeah,
So
and it,
I would definitely agree.
yeah, and I think like for you as well, like something. that I've kind of seen, like essentially you were saying about bodybuilding in previous years, like your life has kind of changed very, very quickly over the
Very,
last couple of
very
years.
quickly.
There's been a couple of new arrivals that I
Jeez.
I
Yeah.
know probably affected your sleep, I'd say, but
Yeah.
and like has and kind of your business has kind of changed a bit, I suppose, at
Yeah,
that time
absolutely.
as well. And
Yeah.
how has that been a
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. No, 100%. It's a brilliant question because I'm pretty sure we were speaking about it before as well. Like, I know you're similar. You started with the physique athletes. You were trying to get people into really amazing shape, photo shoots, prepping people for stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And as time went on, you went more Gen Pop. Naturally, I'd imagine because you were more interested in mindset. You probably wanted more of a challenge, to be honest with you. That's probably a lot of it as well. For me, I suppose after the bodybuilding, gears shifted quite a bit to helping others. I found more fulfillment in that. And what kind of happened, I suppose, over a longer period of time then was that I just naturally worked with more Gen Pop. And then for my own life, alongside all of that, we now have two kids. And having two kids is an entirely different ballgame to not having kids.
Yeah,
And I think because I've naturally shared a lot more about having kids, about family life, about the challenges with it, and because I have such a good understanding, well, I'm still winging it really,
yeah,
like full disclosure, as I'm sure everyone is to some degree. But I think from naturally sharing more of that, I resonated more with the people that have kids, that have family lives, that have the same challenges.
yeah,
And I think since having two kids, it just changes what your purpose is. It changes what's important to you. It changes like why you get up in the morning, why you do long days, why you work to constantly improve yourself as you do as well. And I think from having two kids, your focus and your priority changes, and you realize that it's not just all about going training, getting people in shape. You, I suppose, gain a lot of empathy for people that have a lot more restrictions and a lot more things to kind of work around.
yeah,
That's not to say that I don't work with people that don't have kids. Like, I work with so many people that don't have kids, but I think it just gives me a fuller grasp of my challenges as a whole, or other people's challenges as a whole. I suppose for people that don't know, we have two kids now. We have a 1-year-old, and we also have a little girl. We have a 1-year-old boy, not that anyone cares, and we have we have a 3-year-old girl, little daughter, same thing. She's turning 3 soon, and it's been an absolute roller coaster to adapt with being, self-employed hours. My partner Jean is studying to be a psychotherapist. She's going into her last year now. She's also working in Bernardo's with bereavement, helping kids through bereavement. So kind of to juggle career, business, making sure that the kids are like being met in every kind of way that they
yeah,
need. Probably because I wasn't met that way. That's probably a big focus for me, to be a
yeah,
father figure that I'm proud of, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it's just been a bit of a whirlwind. So I've learned tips. I've learned like better ways to communicate with your partner. Like, I'm sure you're probably the same. I give advice to people on how to communicate better with their partner when they're stressed or when there's stuff going on. So it doesn't just become, I suppose, about training and nutrition. It's so much more, as you said yourself, about lifestyle, about adjustments you make, because it does have a big impact on the overall picture. But yeah, like, I think going from physique athlete to now Gen Pop, you just deal with entirely different issues. And I suppose something that would be really good to touch on here is before and afters. What I found myself is that at the start of my business in the first few years, I would have worked with people that had one focus. They wanted to get in shape. That's all that mattered to them. And, every second post was an outstanding before and after. Now, the way that I approach things now is entirely different, because it's not just about a before and after. It's about how someone feels. And for me, what I want is when someone comes in to work with me, they initially come in to lose a few pounds. I want them to leave feeling like they've literally changed their life. Um, Not only because I have an ego, or I think all of us have an ego, but because I want someone to really get value. And I think losing a few pounds is value, but it's short lived. And if you teach someone everything about, waking up in the morning, restructuring their life, looking at the way they talk to themselves, looking at their self-love, self-care, and how they really carry themselves throughout that whole kind of process, for me is a lot more rewarding because I know it lasts long term. And I know you're exactly the same. So I think, changing someone's life isn't just about getting someone into shape. In that moment, when they see the before and after, when they see how far they've come, they'll feel themselves like that's their life changed. But in reality, I think when you go deeper and you give someone the tools to be able to think for themselves, the tools to be able to understand themselves, the tools to be able to communicate better, to live a more fulfilling life, is that kind of goalpost for me. That's my sense of achievement, I suppose. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you're kind of the same mindset, that before and afters are fantastic. They get people to, I suppose, buy into what you do
Yeah.
on some kind of level, because you do need that buy-in. You do need results. Like, you can't just say, "Hey, I'm going to change your life," and then
Yeah.
have and here, David Young, change your life, and nothing to show for it. So you
Yeah.
do like like, here's this smoke and mirrors kind of, I'll change your
Yeah.
life. Like the magician with
That's what I was just thinking. The magician. That's what you're totally.
yeah,
You just do.
yeah, absolutely. So I think for anyone listening, what I'm trying to get across is, when you see before and afters on social media, they're fantastic, and they'll motivate you. They'll get you to work with someone that you know can get results. But just take a step back and ask yourself, is that really all you want? Or do you want to be able to carry that with you for the rest of your life as well? Do you want to learn how that comes about? Or do you just want to do, and then more than likely be in the same position that you were in previous to that, before and after, a year later, 6 months later? Because what I do see, and what I really don't like, and I'm going to talk about it, and people aren't going to like me talking about it, I do see that people just smash people down for before and afters. How low can we go? How low can these calories go? How high can this cardio go? Let's get it before and after. It's great for business. I'll have a waiting list. I'll be out the door busy. And the person after the before and after is usually in a pretty bad place. Now, I'd love to know your opinion. I know we're getting quite kind of controversial on some kind of level, but I think it's important to talk about these things.
Yeah, because I think that's why I always like my kind of word is sustainable.
Believers
Like
and
I want a
yeah,
sustainable approach, because it's just one of those things that just smashing people will not work because there's a rebound effect from it that is like a trampoline, and
yeah,
and then it's one of those things where the person psychologically then thinks the only way to get there is to drive my head through a wall. and
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
and then the next time they're like, I do not want to go there again. Like they're like,
Yeah,
after they've
absolutely.
blew, and then there's that psychological issue that builds up in them, and that over
100%.
time as well. And that's why you probably
Yeah,
see yourself, a lot of people are very rightfully so skeptic about coaches,
100%.
and I
Yeah,
think they have a good reason to be,
yeah.
but
And
it's
I'm going to interject there.
yeah,
Sorry, there's just one thing that's I really want to talk about. Um, what happens then is, when someone rebounds, and when someone gains a lot of weight after losing a lot of weight initially from following something that wasn't sustainable, is that they then feel like the failure. They're like, that was my fault. I ate around me. I shouldn't have done that. And look, don't get me wrong. There's ownership. There's, not making excuses. There's not playing the victim. But I think when someone goes through something like that, they gain a lot of weight after. It is also not your fault to a certain degree. If you've not been educated, if you've been left in a hole calories wise, if you've just been sold something that gets you in great shape and then that's it, I
yeah,
think it's really important to acknowledge that some people do feel like a failure, which then stops them from going to someone else because they think it's just them and they can't do it. It was their fault. And it also, I suppose, stops people from talking about what's happened as well because they feel like such a failure. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of touch on that.
no, I think that's really good, because even for me, so if I'm coaching someone and we're going low calories, high cardio, like if there's an
It
end result,
happens.
like a photo shoot or something,
Yeah.
I make sure that they're aware. I'm like, this is unsustainable. This
This
is a
isn't a long
short-term
term.
sacrifice to achieve a desired result, and then I'm like, made sure that desired result will not last. we'll
Yeah.
have to come back to,
Yeah.
this, take a
Are you
step back.
prepared for that? Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's where, like, if I am ever going to do that, I want to
You
make
have to
them
be
aware.
very,
And
very
I,
aware.
I try to
Yeah.
make them aware there is the rebound, like even like you were saying, and for some
There's
people
still
it's not
going to
their
be.
fault, not
Yeah.
not their fault, but there's hormonal stuff going on, metabolism stuff
And
that,
even when you, yeah, like even when you bring someone that low, like you're going to be really hungry.
yeah,
You know, as I'm sure you can remember after you competed before and you got really lean,
yeah,
like you had a normal sized meal and you're like, cool, what next?
yeah.
Like what? Like what?
That was,
What are we having now?
I actually think that the post competition for me, the week or 2 weeks, was, I've never experienced that before. And
Horrendous.
I remember contacting my coach. I'm like, there is something wrong with me.
Why am I
I
not
can't,
full?
because I was on
Like,
higher calories obviously than
and you're
before the show,
starving
and
still. You are
I
starving. Yeah.
I had to get Eve, my girlfriend. I was like, you need to try and just make sure I don't do anything crazy here with
Lock
food.
me in a room.
Yeah. But it's funny. It obviously
But
it
it
regulated,
depends.
but I
Yeah.
was like, I was shocked at
Like like
myself.
like like the food focus was real. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
crazy.
it's entirely different, and no one has felt that before because they haven't been that lean. They just think, oh yeah, I'll just eat another meal and I'll be really satisfied. And it
Yeah.
doesn't work like that. It doesn't. And you've lost that big goal. You've lost that drive. You
Mm,
feel like you've attained it. You've dieted for so long that you've been so restricted that you've been thinking about food for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And you can't wait to binge, to
yeah.
be honest. You can't wait to go for it. And you're like, okay, like even when people compete and they're like, so what's your stash? Like, this is my stash. Like, how does your stash look? This is like, have a look at my stash. And it's like a big bag of absolute shite. And I did it. I did it after shows, made myself sick. Couldn't put down food for like 2 days. You've probably done similar, to be honest with you. We won't like to admit it, but we've done it. And I think by doing that, you understand where you don't want other people to be as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like 100%.
I think the same thing happens, obviously, maybe on just a little bit not severe
Smaller scale.
case in a normal
Yeah.
diet, but that's the thing with restrictiveness. And
Mm-hmm.
you see it so much, like you're saying, is for a lot of people, weight loss is not even is not the problem. It's keeping it off. And then
Yeah.
that's where you have to look at the methods behind it, like the strategy you take, how long you take to do it. Because again, something I kind of stress to people is the quicker you go, the like basically your body, your mind, your habits, your routine needs time to settle into that new body. So if it's not there, you're not gonna be able to sustain it, where
Yeah.
sometimes that's why the slower approach and let your lifestyle catch up.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So, like, what I like to talk about with that is just think about building a house and just think about the foundations on a house. If you like build a house on mud that you've quickly thrown together, or even if you think it is three little piggies, you build a house on straw, there's not going to be much that comes along that just blows that down. Whereas if you take your time, you lay brick by brick, you take your time setting the bricks, you take your time putting the cement on them, you take your time understanding how to build a house and how to do it properly, then you're going to withstand the test of time. I think that if someone diets quick, they're going to diet twice. I'm pretty sure I did a post on that before.
Yeah,
And it's just like, if you are going to smash yourself down, you're not going to learn the understanding you need to actually keep it off. And even that word keep it off really doesn't sit well with me, because I think it shouldn't be about keeping it off. It should be about learning to live in a new way,
yeah,
and learning new lifestyle habits and routines that, one, it isn't just about how you look, it's also about how you feel when you have these routines. You feel better, you have more energy, you're happier, you're more fulfilled, you feel like your life is more rounded as a whole. It's not just a case of getting great shape and that's it. And I think when you relate it back to how you feel rather than how you look, it's something that lasts much, much longer for most people, because they can actually say, okay, well, I have a choice here. I can eat absolute shite and I'm not going to look great, but let's look a bit deeper. Let's look at the actual real reason that I don't want to eat shite.
mm,
Personally, for me, I don't want to eat shite because I feel bad. I have low energy. My business suffers. My coaching suffers because I feel like a fraud. I don't want to eat shite because I know that my mental state won't be in a good place. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people just look at the physical perception, but as you alluded to yourself earlier, or as you alluded earlier, you said that like most people, even when they just start drinking more water, they feel better, their mood is better, their life is better. And I think when you tie like your habits and your routines to how you feel rather than how you look, it's something that just settles a lot more, because you can say to yourself, okay, well, I can eat this chocolate bar. I've no problem eating that chocolate bar. I'm going to enjoy that chocolate bar, but I'm going to be conscious enough to know that I don't want my whole day to turn into eating a chocolate bar every hour.
Yeah.
Not because I'm going to look shit, pardon the language, but because I'm going to look away or I'm going to feel a way that isn't conducive to how I want my life to look. Because I don't think anyone really wants to feel lethargic, like no energy, dragging themselves through each day, waking up in the morning, going straight for the coffee, going to sleep at night, absolutely exhausted, not having motivation to do stuff that they love, not having the ability to get out and even chase after their kids, or have fulfilling relationships, not wanting to travel. Like, a lack of motivation in a lot of ways is due to a poor lifestyle. Now, we could talk for hours, as I'm sure you could as well, about how motivation isn't lasting anyway, and it's much more about something entirely different than
Yeah.
taking
Don't
action.
open that can of worms.
No, but
We'll have to get part 2, 3, 4, 5 for that.
dude, we'll just do a whole day. but, but yeah, to cut that short, because I know I could waffle for days. I think you should always tie how you like the habits you're doing to how you feel rather than how you look.
Yeah. That's like something I say is like, you can look good and feel like shite.
Yeah, been
And
there.
but usually when you feel good, you tend to look good as a result.
Because you
So
want to, you will. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and I think that that final thought would be a good way to finish this, because I know me and you could literally talk this. There'd be no light in the room. Everything would be. We'd just
100%.
be sitting in the
Yeah,
dark talking
yeah.
together at
So
5 in the morning.
Matt, what do you think? You're like,
So before
um,
we leave, is there any final thoughts for yourself? I just want to say thanks a million first for taking the time
no,
out of your day to
man.
come on.
Thank you so much for having me. Like, I think for me, getting to spread any kind of message or any kind of thought process inside his head, which can be a bit mad at times, to help others is something that I really cherish. So thank you for taking me on. It's been fantastic to talk to someone that has their head screwed on, knows that it's not just about how you look, knows that it goes deeper, and someone that really, really cares. And I think that's why it's so easy for us to talk the day away, because we're both of the very, very much sort of same mindset. And look, it's been an absolute pleasure talking. I suppose as a closing statement, I would always just try to ask myself, and for anyone listening or watching, realistically, for anyone listening or watching, I just want you to take a step back for a second and just ask yourself, is there parts of your life that you aren't happy with at the moment? And is there parts of your life that, you're not fully fulfilled with? And if there is, first, don't beat yourself up. Realize that it's normal to feel that way. It's never going to feel perfect. If there's something that you've been bothering that, or something that's bothering you that you've been putting off, and something you've been putting to the back of your head, and you've just been saying, not now, it's not the right time, I'm not going to address it. I just want you to realize that you're always going to feel that way. It's never going to feel like the perfect time. You're never going to feel like this is the right time to change. And the longer you let that kind of fester, the bigger it's going to feel. When in most cases, it doesn't have to be something that is as overwhelming to deal with. So, my perspective, if something is bothering you, change it. Don't leave it in the back of your head. Like, I hope if you got anything from listening, you realize that it's never as much of a big a deal as it actually is when you address it, and go after it. If something makes you unhappy, deal with it. Take action on it. You know, we only have one life. We're going to look back in 10 years from now and think, I really wish I addressed that, or why did I put that on the long finger? Why did I put it off? And it's something I talk a lot about to my guys with, my girls primarily. If there's something that bothers you, just address it. Just go head in and just go after it. It's never as big as it seems in your head. And just realize that there's so many people out there with the exact same feeling, with the exact sense of overwhelm, with the exact sense of, I'm just not going, I've just done it long enough. And just reach out to someone that knows what they're talking about, someone like Matt, that, is very well rounded, knows what he's doing, and won't steer you wrong. I think that's what I see. I see so many people wait until it's reactive rather than proactive, and it's always an easier issue to sort when you're proactive rather than reactive. I suppose where you could find me on Instagram at Davey. My name's not actually Davey; it's Dave Y. Uh, so if
I
it's
actually didn't. I wondered that. I never.
yeah,
I
yeah,
only
yeah.
thought. I should have thought of that.
I thought it was the most brilliant idea. Dave White. Everyone will get it. Everyone will get it. And now I get called Davey.
That's.
So
I just
it's
thought you
my own
wanted to
fault.
call yourself
Yeah,
Davey.
it's there you go. That is exactly what everyone thinks. So it's my own fault. But at Davey Davey, I'm mostly posting my stories, and I just try to only really come on when I have something valuable to share. I don't actually make many posts. Mostly like just off the cuff ramblings. I'm usually fairly full on clients. Luckily, I'm very thankful of that. But you will catch me on my stories. And yeah, I just ramble quite a bit. So
And
apologies.
I'll leave that Dave with a Y on it in the in,
Oh,
in the show
that
notes for
wasn't too
everyone.
much of a ramble.
They won't forget your Instagram name anyway. That's a good thing.
Definitely won't. Marketing 101.
Okay, guys. So if you did find some value in today's episode, please drop us a message, drop us a comment, let us know, and
Love to
reach
know.
out. I'm sure Dave will be very glad for you to reach out to him as well. And again, we will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Matt.